I used to. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. It's Monday, May 16th, meeting of the mayor and council. We got a full house tonight. Glad to see everybody. Tonight we have with us Dr. Jeff Pennington, the senior pastor at Smyrna First Baptist Church, 1275 Church Road. I'd invite Pastor Pennington up now to lead us in the invocation and pledge. Everybody, please rise.
Reminded me just how thankful we truly are to be back into some normal rhythms after having to spend so much time in sort of strange places. Lord, we're so thankful that you've given us tonight. Lord, I thank you for this full house tonight. I thank you for this wonderful community that we are so richly blessed to get to live within, and for these amazing elected officers that you've given us who have such wisdom to know how to make such sound decisions that represent the good of all of us. Father, I just thank you for each and every one of them tonight. Pray that your blessing will be on this meeting. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Pennington, for being here with us. Always appreciate you. Item 2 is agenda changes. We don't have any tonight. Before we get to the mayoral report, we have an election a week from tomorrow, May 24th, and I'd like to invite any candidates who are running for office who'd like to say anything to come on up now.
So I'm not a stranger to the council. I've been here since the beginning in February when we first kind of knew about this. My name is Latonia P. Hines, and I'm running for Smyrna Ward 2 City Council. One of the things about me, I've lived here for 20 years. I have been doing public safety during that time. I have been a public servant that entire time, whether or not it's been in the solicitor's office or currently in the DA's office. And the thing I will say is this: I spent the last part of last year in Brunswick, Georgia, for a case that we were prosecuting down there. And if there's one thing that you definitely learn, it is very important to have good people in your local positions. And I want to make sure that I'm able to do that and be able to be here and help serve the citizens and keep things safe. And I'm excited about all of the development that we have coming up. And I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a safe way and make sure that we're figuring out ways that everybody can be able to have the type of home that they want to have here in Smyrna. And if there's anything that I can say, when I look out here, I'm so excited about the Citizens Academy. As a prosecutor, as a person who spent 20-something years as a prosecutor, and sometimes looking into a courtroom and seeing people who look like me, but on the other side, it is so important that people understand what we do in the criminal justice system, what we do in government. And to know that you guys have spent those last 11 weeks doing that, I am so very proud of that. It's awesome. That was just my little moment there for that. No, because it's a great thing. It's a great thing. So I am very excited about this. I look forward to next week on the 24th. And I pray after all that is done and people have voted that I will be sitting up there with you on the council. So I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Any other candidates here this evening? You're the only one that's lost their mind running for office, huh? All right. We'll move on then to the mayoral report. We have 3 items. The first is item A, 2022-276. This is a presentation and graduation of the 2022 Smyrna Citizens Academy. Carson?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us here tonight. I am here to present the 2022 Smyrna Citizens Academy graduates. We have a group of 23 very passionate citizens that were interested in learning more about their local government, so they applied and were accepted to the 3rd Citizens Academy group. Over the last 8 weeks, they have visited to all of our departments and had a chance to talk to our department heads. They were given presentations, demonstrations by Public Works and the fire department, and also tours of facilities such as the recycling center and the police department. They also had the opportunity to ask any questions or give any feedbacks to our department heads, and they really had a chance to see the hard work and dedication that goes into making the city of Smyrna great. So I would like to individually recognize each graduate and hand them their certificates and then have them stand up front for a picture at the end. So our first graduate, thank you, is Joseph Blankenship. Lisa Hoggard. Thank you. Nicole Peak.
Y'all stay up here after you get your award and certificate, and we'll do a picture at the end.
Sure. Karthik Nilasetti.
I see you got your security detail with you.
Darby Wayland. She's not here tonight, but Ann Cranford. Gentry Kazoob. Marcia Gibbert. Claire James. Margot Witzel. Lauren Carter. Pierre Pinda. Anna Marie Chambly. Marcella Lewis. Heather Kumerly. Poonam Patel. Tanner Goldsmith. Triandos Randolph. James Coleman. Gloria Favors. Mark Woods. Barbara Woods. And last but not least, Tasneem Nafar. Thank you. And I think Ashley's going to take our picture. I don't want to cover anybody.
Is that your phone?
It's Ashley's phone.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much, Carson.
Congratulations, everybody. Thank you for taking the time and committing yourselves to learn more about your city. That's a great thing that we can't hardly fit all of y'all up here. That means that we're doing something right. Tell your friends, and hopefully we'll have this program continue and grow each and every year. Excellent stuff. I told y'all you were going to present you with that stuff at the beginning, and you can stay, but you don't have to. So we got a long meeting, so do what you feel. We're not going to take offense if you go. See, they're all smart. They're taking the out. Next is item B, Proclamation 2022-11, Proclamation in recognition of the 2022 USABA Goalball Regional Tournament, May 20th through 22nd at the Smyrna Community Center. And handling this tonight is Councilman Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And while everybody's exiting, I wanted to take a moment of personal privilege and congrats to all of the participants in the program. I see my friends Linda and Hal Simpson in the back, and an honor to present the proclamation tonight. Proclamation by the Mayor of the City of Smyrna in recognition of the Georgia Blind Sports Association USABA Southeast Regional Goalball Tournament, May 20th through the 22nd, 2022. Whereas Georgia Blind Sports Association is an affiliate of the United States Association of Blind Athletes, the governing body for USA Goalball, a Paralympic sport, and whereas Georgia Blind Sports Association, founded in 2011, is committed to providing team and recreational opportunities for the blind and visually impaired. And whereas the Georgia Blind Sports Association will be hosting the USABA Southeast Regional Goalball Tournament to include 28 adult teams from around the United States, and whereas these teams include 12 members of the USA men's and women's goalball teams, recent participants in the 2020 Paralympic Games in Tokyo, Japan, and whereas the City of Smyrna Community Center will be the site of the Southeast Regional Goalball Tournament, May 20th through May 22nd. Whereas over 100 volunteers from the City of Smyrna and surrounding communities will volunteer their time, energy to allow those athletes to compete in the most popular sport for the blind around the world. And whereas the City of Smyrna supports the Georgia Blind Sports Association and USA Goalball and the athletes who train and compete as they represent their communities and their country at both the national and international level. Now, therefore, I, Derek Norton, Mayor of the City of Smyrna, Georgia, do hereby proclaim May 20th through 22nd as Georgia Blind Sports Association's 2022 Goalball Tournament Days. So Hal, Linda, y'all want to come up? Derek, you want to come get a picture?
All right, next on our agenda is item C, Proclamation in recognition of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and I'm gonna read that this evening. This is a proclamation by the mayor of the city of Smyrna in recognition of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas the city of Smyrna takes pride in joining Americans throughout the country in recognizing May 2022 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And whereas the month of May was chosen for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese people to the United States on May 7, 1843, and to mark the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10, 1869, in which the majority of the workers who laid the tracks were Chinese immigrants. And whereas Georgia is home to over 400,000 citizens with Asian Pacific American heritage. According to the U.S. Census, this community is one of the most diverse and fastest growing groups in the United States, representing a multitude of ethnicities, languages, and experiences that enrich America and strengthen our union. And whereas Asian Pacific Americans have played an essential role in writing the American story, from serving our country in uniform, advocating for civil rights, starting new businesses, and more, the contributions of this community touch the lives of Americans every day. And whereas during the observance of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we celebrate the cultural traditions, ancestry, native languages, and unique experiences represented by Asian Pacific Americans across our country and right here in our city in Smyrna, Georgia. And whereas the city of Smyrna continues to work toward becoming an inclusive community in which all citizens are respected and recognized for their contributions to our community, the state, the country, and the world. Now, therefore, I, Derek Norton, Mayor of the city of Smyrna, Georgia, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And tonight we have to accept this proclamation from our own staff, Dat Liu and Jill Head.
When I saw this come across the clerk's desk, I was prepared to say something because I was a little bit afraid that I'd be called upon. And sure enough. But I just wanted to say thank you very briefly to the mayor and council for taking the time and the effort to put forth this proclamation. I've only been here a short time, only 9 months, and I've seen a lot of proclamations come across the clerk's desk. And I'll just say to you that for those whose communities or loved ones that you're honoring, it means something. It means something to them. And in this situation, you're taking the time to recognize a community that's often overlooked and underrepresented. And there are people from various backgrounds, whether they're the immigrants who bravely came here not knowing a lick of English, and or those of us who were born here. These communities have built successful businesses, they've raised successful children, and they've contributed vastly to the American economy. And honestly, I mean, I can say that American culture and Asian culture are kind of coming together, from the food like kimchi and pho and sushi to even pop culture like K-pop, my personal favorite, karaoke, anime, my daughter's favorite. But for me personally, it means something else, because I can remember growing up and just wanting to blend in and fit in. And when you look like me, that's really, really hard. And so you know that, time moves on, people progress, and the dreaded question that I often got was, what are you? But that has transitioned over time into people being so much more accepting and saying, let's go eat something Korean, because that sounds so delicious. But most importantly, it has taken, from my generation that's been a little bit, maybe embarrassed to be singled out, to my children's generation, my 3 children, who are so proud to tell anybody who will listen that they're part Korean. So these little things like these proclamations, even though they're not changing the world, they're little by little changing people's minds. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Deep breath now. I'll just say this administration and this council has been very intentional about making sure. Look, the strength from this community comes from our people. We got a lot of different people represented in this community, and so we've done a very good job, I believe, in trying to make sure that everybody feels a part of what we're doing, is a part of what we're doing, has a seat at the table, is appreciated, and this is just a small way to do that. So. We'll move on now to land issue zonings annexations. We have 4 items, the last one which is being tabled. Item A is a public hearing. This is ordinance 2022-01, approval of ordinance 2022-01 for the adoption of the short-term rental ordinance under Chapter 22, businesses of the city's Code of Ordinances, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Ms. Masheri, the background, please.
The City of Smyrna has received numerous calls and complaints regarding short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods within the city. Complaints have centered on parties, parking, trash, and general property maintenance issues surrounding the operation of short-term rental units. Mayor Norton created the Committee on Short-Term Rentals in the spring of 2021. The committee was created to study and address issues related to the impacts of short-term rental units on surrounding residential neighborhoods and the city. Mayor Norton appointed Councilman Glenn Pickens as the chair of the committee, as well as Councilman Dr. Lewis Wheaton and Mayor Pro Tem Tim Gould. The committee met several times over the last year to discuss short-term rentals and develop a proposed ordinance to address issues and concerns. The Committee on Short-Term Rentals and Community Development recommend approval of Ordinance 2022-01 for the adoption of the short-term rental ordinance under Chapter 22, businesses of the city's Code of Ordinances, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents.
We're going to turn it over to Rusty Martin, who kind of led the effort from the staff perspective on this.
Good evening. I'm Rusty Martin. I'm the Community Development Director. The Community Development Department working alongside the Short-Term Rental Committee, which was chaired by Mr. Glenn Pickens and had Dr. Lewis Wheaton and Mr. Tim Gould on the board or on the committee. This was an ongoing process. We've spent about a year on this process. We've had several committee meetings. We've had an online survey. We've hosted a town hall meeting where we got different perspectives, as well as met with the Georgia Realtors Association along with the Georgia Apartment Association to address their concerns as well. So we finished our final draft back in the end of 2021, but we've spent the past few months of 2022 trying to resolve the little issues that have come up to make sure everybody's sort of satisfied with the end product, and I think we're at that point today. To answer the question, what is a short-term rental? It's basically a residential dwelling unit that's rented for a period not to exceed 30 consecutive days. If a rental exceeds 30 consecutive days, it's not considered a short-term rental. So we clarified that in the ordinance and the definition, as well as another part of the ordinance related to a 180-day period. Do we currently regulate short-term rentals? No, we don't. We handle any issues that arise from short-term rentals as code enforcement issues through the city's property maintenance code and nuisance code. So those are on case-by-case basis, and those typically deal with accumulation of property, leaving trash bins out at the street, party issues, and noise complaints. Some of the problems that we've heard from residents regarding these issues in their single-family neighborhoods are disturbance of the peace, violations of noise ordinance, on-street parking, the transitory nature of the rentals with people moving in and out every couple of days, and then trash on the street and accumulation of debris up at the house and stuff like that. So this ordinance is really geared to address those issues and preserve the single-family neighborhoods within Smyrna. In June 21, we met with a group that specifically deals with short-term rentals or host compliance. They gave us a little data on on our short-term rental market currently here today. We had at that point 253 short-term rental units. As you look through the year, the city fluctuates between 200 and 350 units a year, depending on the season. The median rental rate is $123 per night. And, 60% of those units are single-family homes, 40% are multifamily units, and 78% of those units are entire home rentals, and 22% are partial home rentals, meaning they either rent a room or a basement or something like that. Right now, what we're proposing through this ordinance, we're proposing short-term rental units to be allowed in every residential zoning district, including mixed use and central business districts. What is required for operation in this short-term rental ordinance? The operator needs to acquire a short-term rental license in addition to an occupational tax certificate or business license. The application requirements require proof of ownership, sworn compliance affidavit, liability coverage, and notification to adjoining property owners, and an HOA if applicable. With this ordinance, we are requiring there to be a registered agent for the property. That agent can be the property owner, or it can be somebody that's 21 or older that's designated to respond to complaints or any city issues. There are some limitations that this ordinance places on short-term rentals. There's a few of them. We limit occupancy to 2 or more people per bedroom, plus 3 additional persons. Parking, all parking for short-term rentals has to be on a hard surface on the property. And so there's no on-street parking allowed. We limit the days of use for short-term rental for properties that are owner-occupied. You're allowed more than 180 days of rental. If it's property that is not owner-occupied, and there's a clear definition of what owner-occupied is, they are restricted to 180 days of rental through this ordinance. Single-family properties can only be limited to 1 short-term rental license per property, so they can't rent the principal building or an accessory dwelling on that property, on the same property. Long-term rentals, if you have a long-term rental on the property, that long-term rental cannot turn around and partially sublet rooms within that rental as well. And finally, accessory buildings. Accessory buildings can be rented for a short-term rental if the property is an owner-occupied property. This ordinance sets up the enforcement and penalties associated for violating the ordinance, and then also clarifies taxation. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions for you. It's a pretty clear ordinance now. I think we've spent ample amount of time on this, and I think the committee was happy with the final product of it all. So,
Any questions of Rusty?
Yeah, just a quick question. I appreciate your presentation there, Rusty, and appreciate the hard work of committee on it. Just for clarification, one of the things that we illustrate, I guess, throughout a lot of the discussion is some of the negative aspects of what can happen. That certainly doesn't mean that all short-term rental homes are like that, so it's not to defame, but there's a need to kind of control things. And just to make sure that we're very explicitly clear on this point, if somebody is using a short-term rental for the traveling nurse example, which came up, which I really love, and it's for a 40-day period of time, that person would still be able to use their property for short-term rentals potentially for still 180 calendar days. So that is not deducted from that 180 capacity. Correct.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rusty, again, just to echo, I appreciate all the work and you and your staff did on this, because it was a bit of a process and a lot of learning I think for all of us, right? To hear, we got a lot of input from a variety of folks. Do you remember how many different cities ordinances we looked at, and such a wide range of ways to address this?
We looked at 8 specific cities. Basically Brookhaven, Sandy Springs, South Fulton, Hall County, City of Macon, and then I want to say Savannah.
Yeah.
So no, I mean we looked, and then we looked at the national guidelines and trends in our planning practices and stuff like that, and journals that we get, and see what they do from their perspective from other regions of the United States.
Right. I mean, I think one of my takeaways or my goals was to try to help protect single-family neighborhoods, and the short-term rentals are such an important part of the fiber of our community, right? There's 250 some odd right now, and perhaps more, and it's an important part of our for folks to rent and stay in the city, but single-family neighborhoods, folks buy into those neighborhoods and don't expect to live next to a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this helps provide a level of security and comfort for a lot of those different residences.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the work that we did to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions of Rusty?
I do. Thank you, Rusty, for the work y'all put into it. I appreciate it too. One of the questions I have, and I think I don't know if we could put that last slide up or on the PowerPoint.
Yep.
Let's see, I guess it would have been the last one. And I guess just some clarification on what's the difference between an accessory structure or an accessory dwelling unit. Is that, like, I see it says accessory building, but is there like any way that, I don't know if that's checked, if it's just an accessory structure or accessory building, or if it is actually a dwelling?
Yeah, when we're talking about an accessory building or structure, it's a detached structure on the same property as a house. So sometimes that's just a detached garage that may have an office space or living space above it. Or sometimes it's just a one-story building that may have a studio or some living space in it. When it's classified as a dwelling is when it has a full kitchen and a full bath. And to get classified as a full bath, you need to have a stove on it. So sometimes you have these accessory dwelling units will have a full bath, and then they'll have a kitchenette with a refrigerator, a sink, and a microwave, and that's it. So that may be all really the people need for a short-term rental.
They would have to have some things like a bathroom and
Yeah.
some things like that to rent. Okay. All right, thank you.
Well, yeah, there's not a requirement for that for them to rent.
So they could rent it even if it doesn't have a
I mean, there's-
restroom in it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I mean, yes, there will be a bathroom, but there doesn't have to be a full kitchen.
yeah, I understand that. Okay.
If there's no bathroom, the rent's a little less.
Pardon me?
I said if there's no bathroom, the rent's probably a little less.
Probably is. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions of Rusty? Thank you, Rusty. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody here that wants to speak for or against this item, if you'd come forward now and be sworn in by our city attorney. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. In Mr. Pickens' absence, we'll turn this over to Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My pleasure to recommend motion to approve item 4A ORD 2022-01 as previously read.
Have a motion by Mr. Gould. It's been seconded by Dr. Wheaton. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 5-0. Thank you. Item B, 2022-193. This is a public hearing, zoning request Z22-007, allow rezoning from R15 to R10 for a two-lot subdivision at a density of 4.29 acres, units per acre, .466 acres, land lot 489, 1195 Hill Street, David Gann and Donna Mathis. Background, please, Ms. Sherry.
The applicant is requesting a rezoning from R15 residential to R10 residential for a two-lot, single-family detached subdivision. The subject property is zoned R15 and is occupied with a single-family home. The applicant plans to retain the existing home and build one new single-family detached home on the new lot. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval by a vote of 6-0 at the April 11, 2022 meeting. The zoning proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Therefore, Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning from R15 to R10 with a density of 4.29 units per acre at 1195 Hill Street with conditions.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to Joey for his presentation.
Good evening, Joey Stobbs, Planner 2. This is rezoning case Z22-007. The applicant is David Gann and Donna Mathis. The planning board heard this on April 11th and they recommended approval 6-0. The subject property is 1195 Hill Street, a little under half an acre. There's an existing single-family home on the property. They're looking to subdivide the property to build a new house and rezone the property from R15 to R10. The future land use of the property is moderate density residential, as is most of the properties around it. That allows a density of up to 4.5 units per acre, and this would be 4.29 units per acre. This is the subject property. The house is titled B on this site plan. They're looking to put a lot line here in the middle so they can build a new house. It'll have the R10 setbacks of front 25 feet, side 7.5 feet, and rear 25 feet. They'll have stormwater detention for the property for the new house. And we'll have a side entry garage for the new house. We are requesting right-of-way dedication and sidewalk along Hill Street, which they provided. There's only one variance needed. The existing garage on tract B has a accessory structure larger than 25%. So there's a variance to keep that existing garage there for a size of 35% of the primary structure. This is an example of the front home elevation and the pictures of the subject property and the surrounding properties. Staff is recommending approval of the rezoning to R10 with a density of 4.29 units per acre with the following conditions. Standard conditions regarding the architecture, the tree plantings. Standard special conditions are the setbacks previously mentioned, minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, minimum lot width of 50 feet, minimum driveway length of 22 feet, have a minimum driveway setback of 1 foot, the variance for the garage on the existing house, 14 is the right-of-way dedication, and 15 is the 5-foot sidewalk and 2-foot grass strip. During construction, they'll have to provide details of the retaining wall for the new lot. The maximum height is 35 feet, and they'll have to meet all fire access requirements, water and sewer improvements, and stormwater requirements. They'll be subject to the site plan submitted with the application, and then the elevation submitted with the application. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Joey?
Yes, Joey, just for a point of clarification, can you put that last screen back up? The site map, I got, yep. So the structure B is going to remain, and then I know early on there was a discussion about the right-of-way there to the right. That remains as well.
I think
going through to Fleming.
I think they're using half of that right away. It's an abandoned alley, and the existing house is remaining.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Joey. This is a public hearing. I'd like anybody who'd like to speak for, I'll invite the applicant up first. Thank you. Since I see him moving towards the podium. Mr. Sams, I'm sorry.
Quite all right, Mr. Mayor.
Sometimes I get a little ahead of myself. Sorry about that.
No,
Welcome.
it's okay. I've been watching you very closely tonight, Mr. Mayor. I think you're doing a good job. Opine's an individual who's before a lot of jurisdictions. Comparatively speaking, you do an excellent job, Mr. Mayor. Well, good evening. Now that I'm through buttering the mayor up. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I am an attorney of the law firm of Sams, Larkin, Huff in the city of Marietta, and I represent the applicants who are also the property owners concerning this application. Mr. David Gamm is Jamie Mathis, aka Donna Mathis on the application. They're seated here with me, right back there, and so they can supplement or respond to any questions that perhaps I'm not able to adequately respond to. This is a request, as Joey said, from the R15 classification to R10 for purposes of 2 single-family detached residences. One is there, and before I even got into heavy discussions with my client, I was looking at listings of that, and at one point, and looked at the interior of it, and to go ahead and anticipate and answer your question, that house is very much going to stay. It's had some recent renovation on the inside and outside, and it looks good. So we're talking about that staying and then building a new home. This was heard and recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. My partner, Parks Huff, presented it, but there was no opposition at the time, and just one Planning Commission member, I think, was absent. So no opposition to this. David and Jamie, if you allow me to use your first names, they've done a good job going around the neighborhood, sending out information to the property owners and making certain that everyone knew what they were doing. Of course, this is a rezoning that's recommended for approval. It meets your comp plan, your future land use map. I've handed out, and you can see the architectural renderings and elevation for the conceptual architecture. Caldwell Klein, which is one of the best architects in Georgia, this is their preliminary sketch, but we're agreeing that the exterior architecture will be conditioned upon in substantial conformity to that rendering that you're seeing. Staff recommended approval, meets the comp plan. We're not asking for a future land use map amendment. You got a heavy agenda tonight. I'll be glad to respond to any questions, but I think it's just a fairly straightforward case, and with no opposition, staff's recommendation, we do respectfully request, Mr. Lindley, Mr. Mayor, Council, that you follow the Planning Commission's recommendation. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Sams? Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Now, this is a public hearing. I'd invite anybody who'd like to speak for or against this item to come and be sworn in by our city attorney now. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. This is in Councilmember Lindley's district. Councilmember Lindley.
I have heard nothing from the neighborhood. I had early on dialogue with the applicant. Always good to see Mr. Sams, and a brief, succinct Mr. Sams. With that, motion do pass is presented.
Have a motion do pass. It's been seconded by Dr. Wheaton. All those in favor, please vote. It's approved 5-0. Item C, 2021-518. This is a public hearing, a zoning request Z21-015. Allow rezoning from R15 to CBD for an antique shop, land lot 522.6 acres, 2986 King Street, Antiques, Wood and Rustics, LLC. Ms. Masheri, the background, please.
Antique Woods and Rustics LLC is seeking approval of a rezoning for 2986 King Street from R15 to CBD for the ability to use the existing structure for antique sales. The existing home will remain and parking area will be added to the property. The applicant is proposing 10 parking spaces for the proposed business at the rear of the property behind the existing structure. The current site plan shows 10-foot landscape buffers to the north and west adjacent to the residential properties. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended for approval by a vote of 4-2 at the April 11, 2022 meeting. The Urban Design Commission recommended approval at the April 26, 2022 meeting. Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning from R15 to CBD to allow antique sales with conditions.
We'll turn it over to Rusty Martin for his presentation.
All right, good evening. This one is taking a little bit to get to you guys. Obviously, it was submitted back in October. We've gone through many iterations of this plan, trying to make sure the infrastructure and everything works appropriately for the site. This property is 2986 King Street. It's about just a little over a half acre in size. It is currently being used as a single-family resident. The applicant is proposing to keep the existing building but convert it into a small antique shop and provide the necessary improvements for parking and ADA access into the building. With that being said, they need to rezone the property from R15 to Central Business District. The original application requested a rezoning to neighborhood shopping, but staff talked them into amending that application to go to CBD because the uses fit with the downtown area, and as well as allows them to do the permitted uses that they're seeking. The subject property is mixed use on our future land use map. There's no change to that proposed future land use designation. The CBD is an appropriate zoning district under that mixed use zoning. And if you look on this map, you'll see to the north it's mixed use, to the east it's public institutional, to the south is neighborhood activity center, and to the west is mixed use. So it's a mixture of future land uses in this area. This is a proposed site plan. You got the single family home in the middle of the property, and it'll remain with no significant improvements to it. The proposed building is not being improved. It meets the zoning setbacks for the CBD zoning district. This is proposed access drive off of King Street. The existing drive is a gravel drive. They're going to improve that, make it a 24-foot wide standard driveway into the property. They'll improve the driveway apron, and as part of the UDC approval, they requested a 10-foot decorative strip across that driveway. That'll be outside of the right-of-way as you enter their property. Once you get around the building, there's 10 parking spaces within the site, and they're all located. It'll be pervious paving on that backside to reduce the stormwater management impacts. And then there'll be a 10-foot landscape buffer that'll be planted adjoining all the single-family zoning to the west and to the north. In addition to all that, there's going to be a 4-foot wide ADA sidewalk that'll provide ADA access to the building, which is a requisite for commercial development. And there are no variances needed to do any of this work. This is a subject property. Another picture of the driveway, the existing driveway and the subject property. The large tree on the left is planned to remain on site, even with all those improvements. And then you got the subject properties that adjoin. Community Development has reviewed this request and is recommending approval of the rezoning from R15 to CBD with the stipulations provided below. Number one, requiring the developer to provide any traffic improvements deemed necessary by the city engineer during plan review. Number two, no burying of debris on site. Number three, they need to meet all the requirements of the tree ordinance. And number four, landscape and sod all the landscape areas. In addition, we had some special conditions. Number five, the development shall maintain the following setbacks for CBD. Number six, the structure shall be lower than 35 feet in height. And number seven requires a 10-foot landscape buffer along the northern and western property lines. 8 requires the development to meet fire access requirements. And then 9 requires the developer to do any water and sewer improvements deemed necessary by the Public Works Director. And 10, the developer needs to be responsible for any stormwater improvements deemed necessary by the city engineer. Number 11 prohibits outside storage of goods or merchandise during or for display to be sold. And 12 ties the zoning of the property to the site plan submitted. And then 13, there's some additional stipulations the applicants agreed upon that are self-imposed. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions of Rusty?
Rusty, what is the required number of parking spaces on this site?
It's 10.
And you have
At
9.
that, it's at a ratio, I believe, of 1 space or 5.5 spaces per 1,000. And I think this is 1,800 square foot building.
You have 9 and then 1 handicap out front.
Yes, sir. The existing shed will go away, and that'll be where their dumpster pad will be located in an enclosure.
Rusty, in the, I assume the parking lot, the impervious soil, whatever, I guess the pavers for the parking area, and do they have any long-term maintenance responsibilities around that, or to maintain the impervious portion of it?
No, typically that's going to be, it's going to be a gravel and sand base. So there'll be a necessary construction requirements that meet a certain detail for they get the appropriate percolation and infiltration into the ground.
Any other questions of Rusty?
Yeah, real quick, I saw something about the concrete dumpster pad. Is that located there? I guess would be in the northwest corner of the property.
Yeah, it'll be where the existing, it'll be right there where the existing shed is located.
Would this be a commercial type dumpster? I mean, am I looking at a truck that's going to drive down there and lift it in and dump it?
More than likely, or if they contact Public Works and they're able to work something out with, depending on their sanitation needs, if they can work out a Herbie-Kirby, they may do that, and have a little small, container. But I would imagine they'll probably need a dumpster at that point.
I would too. I guess what I'm looking at is one of our commercial trucks driving into this site and then coming out. I mean, the only thing they can do is to drive in and back out. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yes, and typically the length that you'd need for a turnaround would be over 150 feet, and this is below that. So
okay, so they would go in and then they would back out onto King Street.
And remember, this is commercial sanitation, so it's not our trucks. It's going to be Waste Management's trucks.
True. Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Rusty?
Sure. So I have a question about that dumpster and the pad as well. So right now, they would have to have a dumpster there versus the like the Herbie Kirby's? Is that what you're
That's
saying?
what we're planning for.
And is the pad in that 10-foot buffer also?
No,
Oh.
it's outside of it, and then they'll be required to provide an enclosure around it. Typically, that's going to be a brick enclosure with a gate in front of it.
Okay. And then you also said that the height is the maximum of 35 feet for the building, so that would go along with it, even though it's being rezoned to commercial business district, or?
I think that's the district standard to start
Oh,
off
it is?
with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was
So
a
they're not,
residential
they're not
standard.
proposing any improvements to the building, so they're not adding on to the building or adding a second story to the building. So we're just identifying what the district standard is.
Rusty, what are the plans for the actual structure? Is it being retrofitted for a business?
I'll let the applicant handle that, but my understanding is there's not going to be a lot of outdoor or exterior improvements. They may improve the interior to make, interior renovations so it flows and they can display their merchandise and everything else. But I don't know what that full extent of those improvements are going to be.
And then the plan is the large tree on the corner.
Yeah, it's not shown on this plan, but the large tree pretty much right there where the signal pole is going to remain because it won't be impacted by any of the improvements. I think there's a tree on the western boundary closer to Concord that may have to go just due to the improvements and with respect to that.
Mr. Welch.
Rusty, is there no requirement for a landscape buffer other than just a 10-foot buffer on that north side?
The city's ordinance 503 requires a 10-foot landscape buffer from commercial properties, from residential properties when the property is under 5 acres in size. So yeah, there's a 10-foot landscape buffer on the north side because there's a residential property there. And then there's a 10-foot landscape buffer on the western side because there's a residential property there.
But I don't see a landscape plan of any type. What's the plan?
It'll be evergreen screening. They'll have to provide that prior to getting their business license issued. So with the improvements for the parking area, that's going to require a land disturbance permit, and that tree plan is typically part of that package. So they'll show, I'm assuming it'll either be cryptomeria, cedars, and small magnolias and stuff like that in that buffer.
What is that little block about halfway down the landscape buffer? Little square block.
I think that's just showing an existing pad or something right there, a little concrete pad. That'll go away.
All right, thank you, Rusty.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to invite the applicant up now.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, and Huff in the city of Marietta, and I represent Antiques Wood and Rustics, LLC. I'm going to call them AWR because that's a pretty long name, but I'm also going to identify them with the owners of the property, Patty and Ben Ferguson, who are seated right there. And they're the ones I answer to, not AWR. They're the principals of the company. So They are intimately familiar with this and can address any questions you may have that I can't answer. As was stated, this is a 0.68 acre tract of land located on the north side of Concord Road, right there at its intersection with King Street, 298 King Street. It's in a sub-area called for mixed use. There's a neighborhood activity center across the street, public and institutional, and things transition northerly, even though it's mixed use. I'm assuming that went from NAC to mixed use to establish a transition or step down northward. And I'll get into that in just a minute because we do exactly that. We are seeking a rezoning originally to the NS classification, but after talking with staff and looking at the CBD requirements in juxtaposition to the DDA requirements and the requirements of the Urban Design Commission as well, we thought staff had not only a good point, but certainly almost a mandatory point in terms of what we and they felt was appropriate. So we did change the application to a request to CBD. Central Business District, but it's specifically, exclusively, expressly for this use only, an antique shop, antique store. Let me tell you where we've come, and yes, we filed this back in October, and yes, we've been through probably 5, maybe 6 iterations of the plan. And it's not because we don't have a good land planner, because we got a darn good one. And it's not because we've missed anything. It's just because your staff, they fly spec everything as well they should that comes through. They look at it very carefully. And from the very beginning, and I don't think I'm talking out of school, your community development director said that they would be more inclined to speak favorably and look at this favorably if we weren't asking for any variances. So we're not asking for any concurrent variances, waiving any type of city requirements. But since this has been pending, we've received on March the 30th a recommendation of approval from your staff. The city's planning commission, in a 5-2 vote, recommended approval on April 11. The Downtown Development Authority and the Urban Design Commission recommended approval on April 26. The city's future land use map and your comp plan show this to be, as Mr. Martin said, within a mixed-use area directly across Concord from the Neighborhood Activity Center. And you'll recall last year I rezoned the bank building over on the other side of Concord Road for Shamrock Building Systems. That was Z20 Z20-015. That's fully operational. It looks good. It was a good decision. That was a clear and purposeful and meaningful repurposing of that building. And I have not been on the interior. I don't know if you guys have or not, but the exterior looks darn good. As I mentioned, the Fergusons aren't requesting any variances. Councilman Welch, to your point, we submitted turning movement models to the fire marshal, and so the fire marshal has signed off on this, and for the other ancillary reasons which Mr. Martin told you about as well. So we meet both exterior and interior turning maneuverability requirements. A little bit about Patty and Ben, and I know I'm not here to give you their CV, but they've been operating in the antiques business for some time. They've got an antique store located Bells Ferry Road, but they want to do everything from this specific location. And when I say with specificity what this is a high-end antique store. It's demographic oriented to this city and your per capita income and your demographic driven citizens who are here. This antique store is going to mix European country with Southern decor and charm. And no, those are not my words. I don't speak with charming words too often. But that's the way it's described in their literature and what they're trying to do. In other words, if you take a look at some of the photos that are in the handout, you can see the ilk of the type of antiques they have. This is not a consignment shop. It's not a flea market. It's not a pawn shop. This is a high-end antique shop. And what they do, they work on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 4 days a week. The other days they're traveling either abroad or wherever to get these high-end antiques. So as far as their operational aspects of this, they also are going to be working just those days, not on Sunday when the church to our north is in operation. Saturday's their biggest day. Obviously, they don't affect A&P and peak hours. This is a destination oriented. You're either going there or not. I usually don't drive by and say, I think I'll buy an antique. As a part of this process, though, I counseled Mr. and Mrs. Ferguson. I said, we really need to show that this is something that there's not an abundance of in the city and it's needed. So they conducted what's called a needs analysis, and it determines the uses within a 3-mile radius of the property which are present, which are available. And there's not just a paucity of high-end, or for that matter, any type of antique stores. There are, the closest one is 5 miles away. In fact, so the opposite is Marietta, city of Marietta, in which I live, 25, 30 years ago, it had probably 20, 25 antique stores. Now that's doubled in terms of the number of restaurants. So they've achieved the balance. You're not out of balance with antique store at all. To the west, Treasure Hunt Antiques is located 12 miles away. To the north, Marietta Antiques Mall is 6.5 miles away. To the east in Sandy Springs, there's a small store called Now and Again, 9 miles away. And to the south, Englishman Antiques, which unfortunately my wife loved too much, is located 5 miles away from the subject property. So as you can see, the Ferguson's research has shown that this is needed. They know your per capita, they know the demographics, and the needs analysis pointed in this direction. While this has been pending, we've talked to area property owners. I don't know if there's people here in opposition tonight, but we think we've addressed and resolved the concerns that are out there, also with business owners. Just a couple of our stipulations, which I think are important, and they don't deviate from staff's, but they go maybe one step further. And number one is, as Mr. Martin said, we're going to be getting rid of that shed. And again, towards Councilman Welch's and Councilperson Wilkinson's statements, that will be built according to your design detail standards. It'll have a pad. It'll be fully enclosed, but that shed's going away. Just so you'll be aware of that. And we really had to, as far as the pervious pavers, Ms. Gould, there's a 60/40 credit for that, so you don't get full credit for that. So there's as Rusty said, there's a percolation or maintenance component to that's built into the process, so it doesn't require any more upkeep and maintenance than does the balance of the paved driveway. It's not crusher run. I mean, it's actual pervious pavers. We've got a specific stipulation here: no thrift stores, flea market operations. There's not going to be a restaurant, and there's no tea room. There's nothing associated with this from a food or beverage. And many of these antique shops have these, both in the Atlanta area and other places as well. This will be unique for the city. Again, their busiest day is on Saturday. If there's any signs, it'll be ground-based monument-style signage. Exterior lighting, if any, will be just as staff has instructed and described in my stipulation letter. If we have to have any light stanchions or poles on the property, they will replicate what you have here in the city in Market Village. Mr. Martin's correct. We're saving that just absolutely gorgeous tree. Just lucky where it's located. We're not into its drip line with any development. We are utilizing the existing structure, Councilman Lindley. It will be retrofitted, it'll be repurposed, and it will be mostly focused on the interior of it in order to set it up for the shop as opposed to a residential configuration. I was asked before the Urban Design Commission whether we were going to be painting it. The color is going to remain. But if we let them know then, we'll let you know now. If it's somehow objectionable to, the color is something to be changed. I think it looks darn good, but that's my aesthetics. The parking pavers I've told you about, on the north side of the property, again, Mr. Welch, to go past the buffer, we're going to have an opaque privacy fence along that northern property line as well. The plantings will be pursuant to the city arborist's recommendation. I haven't set up a landscape committee. We'll just do what your arborist says to do in terms of what goes into there. This is very low intensity. It's a permissible use under CBD. It's within the parameters of mixed use. And more importantly, what it does, it takes that first piece of mixed-use property on the other side of Concord Road, and it establishes the beginning of a step down. And when I say step down, I mean a step down, either utilization of existing structures or certainly something that maintains some sort of residential type of appearance and allows for almost a textbook example of what you would consider to be a step down as you go towards the northernmost end of that mixed-use development. So for all these reasons, and for all the recommendations we have at every level where we've appeared and presented, we do ask that you follow your staff and your planning commission's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any
Mr.
questions of
Lynn?
Mr. Sams?
Thanks, sir.
No questions. This is a public hearing. I'd invite anybody who'd like to speak for or against this item to come up and be sworn in now.
I do.
You'll state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jeff Meadows, 2975 Reed Street. My property adjoins their property on the backside, my backyard. And we want to keep the place a residential community. The commercial designation is not what we want to see. So we're against it because of that, and then the future possibilities. When I was at the last meeting, they were talking about, all these other things that could be in the future, and that is objectionable as well. And that's about all I've got to say.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Hatcher. I live down the street at 1184 Love Street. And I agree with Jeff. I think it is kind of an entrance into the city, and I think it should remain residential. The dumpster is a bit of a concern, the getting in and out, in pulling that thing out, like you mentioned, Mr. Welch, and backing out into the street right there. It's right at the intersection of Concord Road and King Street, and we see from time to time issues in that with the construction and what's going on downtown right now. We've seen traffic back up all the way to the stop sign. And so if you've got periodically a big truck backing out of there, that could present some issues on Concord Road and on King Street right there. And then the other issue is just it has been residential that house has been there for at least 112 years now. And so it's an antique in it of itself, but maintaining a residential area here I think is important for the city. I think that the city has done a great job of creating a walking neighborhood. And I think that adding more residences or keeping that as a residence would continue to promote that.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak for or against this item? All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing. This is in Ward 3. We'll turn it over to Councilmember Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to my colleagues for some poignant questions. I think there is, as Mr. Sams noted, we've sort of wrestled with this as Rusty and Joey have sort of kept us apprised, and Mr. Sams has been kind enough to pass along the twists and turns as they've worked through the plan. And I do want to say to the applicants, we certainly applaud and appreciate anybody wanting to come to Smyrna and do business. But I sort of echo some of the concerns that have been voiced tonight. And for that reason, I don't believe we're ready for this plan yet. In motion to deny.
Councilman Lindley's made a motion to deny. That's been seconded by Councilman Welch. Those voting in favor to deny will vote yes. Those opposed to deny will vote no. That motion to deny is approved 5-0. Item D, 2022-145. This is going to be tabled until June 6th. This is zoning request Z22-005. Allow rezoning from GC and O&I to TS conditional for the development of a 107-room hotel and rebranding of a 135-room hotel, 3.115 acres, land lots 846, 880, and 881. Mogar Farms Funding LLC, 2855 Spring Hill Parkway and 2685 Spring Road. This will be tabled to the June 6th Mayor and Council meeting at the applicant's request. I need a motion and a second, please. So moved by Mr. Lindley, seconded by Dr. Wheaton. All those in favor of tabling this item, please vote. And that's approved 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, with respect to this application, may I say something?
Yes, sir.
It's not going to be a presentation.
Yes, sir.
We represent Mogar Funding, and found out that Mr. Akins was not going to be able to be here. So we were more than happy to continue it. So I just wanted you to know it's been pending for a while, working hard with this, but wanted to make sure. Pickens, I'm sorry, Mr. Pickens was not going to be able to be here tonight. So I just wanted you to know that we acquiesced to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Item 5 is privileged licenses. We have none. Item 6 is formal business. Item A, 2022-266. This is a public hearing. This is for the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget. I'll invite our staff up now. Landon wore a tie. This must be pretty serious.
Oh, it is. Thank you. So I do know this meeting has gone a little long. However, I would like to note that we didn't start until after 9 o'clock last year. So essentially we're 30 or 40 minutes ahead of schedule. So everybody's just buckle in. No, I'm kidding. We will...
Y'all have done a good job putting this together. We're ready for your presentation.
As always, we will try to be respectful of everyone's time and be efficient in how we get through this. The budget we're presenting tonight is a product of a process that started in November with our CIP kickoff, and then our CIP meetings in January, and then our operating budget kickoff in February with our operating meetings with Kristen and I, as well as Penny and Joe, our city administrator, with departments in March. And then we proposed this to council in last Cal meeting of April. So product of several months of work, and we feel good about what we've put together. So just as we look at an overview here of what we'll give you all, do some comparisons, both revenue and expenditures, and then our FY22 budget to our FY23. And then we'll go through some of our bigger funds, general fund, E911, hotel, motel, our water sewer fund, and then we'll go through our personnel recommendations for this year, some fee changes we have, our debt obligations, and then capital projects, which will include both CIP and our SPLOST. So if we look here first, we have our total proposed budget, and this is a comparison from our FY22 revised to FY23 proposed. If we look here at the general fund, it has actually gone down from our revised budget. That's due to some amendments that we've had throughout the fiscal year for FY22, along with, as we'll hit on here in a few minutes, a decrease for commercial sanitation, both in our revenues and expenditures. Our special revenue funds, that is our hotel motel fund, E911, the American Rescue Plan Act, which we'll probably refer to here on out as ARPA, as well as some other just kind of miscellaneous funds. Capital projects funds, what's included in that is our CIP SPLOST 2016 and 22 SPLOST, general fund, CIP, E911 CIP. Internal service funds is our vehicle replacement fund, and then enterprise, that's where we find our water sewer CIP, stormwater fund. So just looking at those overviews, I mentioned general fund going down, special revenue fund. It has decreased due to, we had $2.1 million budgeted for our CARES Act, which was federal COVID relief money in '22, and we won't have that this year. That money's been spent. The reason we see that very big difference in capital projects fund from this year to next year is pending the vote, and we're working under the assumption that it will pass tonight, of approving the full SPLOST projects for a little over $100 million. So that's included in the $132 million. We'll approve all of that this year, so then going forward, unless there's a change to a project budget, that will stay the same. But then for our capital projects, we are spending a little over $11 million from our SPLOST funds. Internal service funds, we're spending a little less for vehicles. We're actually buying more vehicles. We'll hit on that later, but for less money, some smaller purchases. And then our enterprise funds, our water sewer CIPs decreased a little bit. We finished some projects up luckily, so that's decreased as well. So now if we look at our comparison of revenues over expenditures, by law we are required to present a balanced budget for general fund, which we've done. Our special revenue funds, we're spending about $1.8 million expenditures over revenue. That is because in the ARPA funds, which I referred to earlier, our American Rescue Plan Act, we've already collected all of that revenue in fiscal year '22, but we'll be spending 1.8 of that in FY23. Our capital projects, you will see a big transfer from cash reserves of $10.3 million. That is because with revenue we have been collecting 2016 SPLOST revenue over the past 6 years. So in many years, we've been collecting more than we've spent, so we've built that up from reserves. But we're still spending on it this year, even though our revenue has ceased. So we have saved up sufficient fund balance to cover those expenditures for this year. So don't be too worried by that $10.3 million. And then if we go down to our internal service funds, our revenues are over expenditures there. That is due to the fact that we budget the 30-year annual average of what we'll spend on vehicles, along with this year will be $150,000 for emergency replacements that pop up through the year when cars get in wrecks. And then the expenditures you see are only those specific cars that we're budgeting to replace. That's not included in emergency funds. We will bring budget amendments to you all for that. Then our enterprise fund, we are budgeting a $1.7, almost $1.8 million to cash reserves. We are comfortable doing that because we have the luxury thus far of not taking on debt for any water infrastructure, which is incredibly expensive. That enables us, a few years ago, we had to spend $4.3 million for a Windy Hill line modification, so that allows us to do that, so we are comfortable doing it. That transfer to cash reserves is down from about 1.9 last year, so it's still a pretty healthy number. So if we look here at some of our general fund revenues, our biggest revenue items by far is property taxes. That makes up for about 62% of our revenues, and then our charges for services are about 13%. Our property tax has gone, percentage-wise, property tax has gone up this year. Our Cobb County is projecting the property tax to increase about 10.5%. We typically trend a little higher, so we're projecting an 11% increase. And then our charges for services have gone down. The council voted in December that waste management would handle all the billing for our commercial sanitation, whereas the city used to do that. So both our revenues and expenditures have decreased about $2.5 million from that decision. And then if we go down, looking at these others as miscellaneous, other taxes, that includes insurance premium tax, financial institutions tax, alcohol beverage excise tax, interfund transfers is things like water sewer fund transfer, hotel motel fund, they transfer into the general fund. Licenses and permits, intergovernmental, it's revenue received from Cobb County under House bill for services provided by the city that would otherwise fall under the county domain. And then we have fines and forfeitures, municipal court fines, library fines, probation fines, those types of things. Lastly, miscellaneous, we receive a village maintenance fee from those residences that are in the downtown area, and those are rents and royalties and interest as well. So if we go next just to our general fund expenditures, as an overview, our public safety makes up for about 28% of our general fund budget. That is police, jail, fire, and all the divisions within that, response, training, prevention, EMA, administration. General government, those are parks and all of its divisions, community development, library, administration. Public works, it's about 16% of our general fund budget. It makes up buildings and plant, highways and streets, recycling, sanitation, maintenance and shop, which is our fleet. And then we have insurance and other benefits, things like health insurance, retirement. Those cost quite a bit of money. Debt, we have about $5.8 million, 10% of our total budget. That's gone up a little bit. We did issue additional bonds this year. Kristen will speak on those in a few minutes. And then our CIP and vehicle replacement, which we will touch on those as well. Just some notable general fund expenditures, so benefits, any fund, E911, water, sewer, and hotel motel that has employees bears some responsibility for our benefits, but the general fund, 90% of those benefits are absorbed by that. There's a $180,000 decrease to our health insurance this year from what we budgeted last year. We're projected to spend just under $6 million this year. That's a lot of money, but the good news is it was less than we budgeted, so we decided to take that number down to about 6.1 this year, looking at what we have spent in historical trends. And then from our retirement contribution, this does say increase. It is a decrease from what we budgeted, but it's an increase from what we will end up actually paying to our contribution. So we, the city, participates in the Georgia Municipal Employees Benefit System. So this is the pension component of that retirement. So we have an actuary look every year, and they make assumptions and give us a recommend an annual contribution. So as long as those assumptions hold, this contribution should be able to make sure we meet our future pension obligations. So that number is about $2.8 million. If we get down $200,000 for a city branding update, this is something we think is important. This branding update will analyze the city's, our current brand and create kind of an updated toolkit for managing and communicating the city's identity and consistently across all departments and platforms. And within that budget, it will also account for community and stakeholder input so we can make sure we're creating the best possible branding for the city. Then as we move down, we see $552,000 for contingency. 325 of that is our merit increases. That is half year. We bring that back to the mayor and council to approve that in January. That number did go up from last year because we went through a class and compensation study this year. We had an outside consultant come in and evaluate all of our pay grades and how long everyone's been here, compression issues to address those, which we had not done in quite some time. And then that 227 is for unallocated contingency. That is for the inevitable things that pop up throughout the year that can get quite expensive. Some other general fund expenditures, $75,000 for the Atlanta Road Artery. The concept of this has already been approved by council a few months back. This money represents a matching sponsorship for that. It was initially brought to council by Public Arts Task Force and then staff recommendations, so we're hoping to get that done. Next, $30,000 for multi-factor authentication. This is everyone that annoying thing that we get with a text message that makes you log in 2 different ways, but it is there to help us be secure and maintain cybersecurity, which we think is quite important. And then $30,000 for heritage celebrations. This is the second year that we've done this for things like Black History Month celebrations and Hispanic Heritage Month. Feel good about how those went last year, and we are continuing to do that. $25,000 for traffic signal study and analysis. This is just for studies to further improve our traffic in the city. There is also money in SPLOST that will cover traffic calming initiatives to address those issues, but this is, if we see any, we want to make sure that we're doing the right things, making the right changes. Lastly, there we have $10,000 for library landscape. We, with our construction we're currently doing downtown, more people will be entering from the back of the library, and Mary, our library director, felt that it was important that looks very presentable and is consistent with how the downtown will look as we make improvements there. So we supported that. Going through some of our funds here, if we look at the top, this is our E911 fund. The city operates its own E911 call center. So if you make an emergency call within the city, it gets routed to our dispatchers. So our E911 fees are collected from telecommunication providers. This number has gone down a little bit. We had some cities drop off of using us as their provider. Powder Springs is one of those. And so typically you'll see our other revenue, the transfer from the general fund. It usually does require a supplement from the general fund, and that has increased this year from about 284, 289 up to 625,000 to make sure that we can fund that and continue those emergency services. And you can see the salaries and benefits at the end. That completely funds our E911 center. Our next one here is hotel motel. So with our revenues, we collect taxes on room nights occupied in Smyrna hotels. Typically before the pandemic, that number had been about at 1.5 million. However, as you could imagine, with the pandemic, there was a lot less traveling going on, so that number took a gigantic hit down to just under $1 million. However, we are encouraged by what we've seen this year with increases, so we are projecting that revenue to be back about where it was before the pandemic. However, we typically are able to transfer some revenues to cash reserves. This year we are budgeting a use of hotel motel reserves. That's mainly due to our 150th annual birthday celebration. I'm going to have a bigger band, fireworks, the whole thing, but we have saved up plenty of fund balance to be able to comfortably do that. And then if we move down, we see the expenditures. Our hotel motel fund, we have an agreement with the Cobb Marietta Coliseum and Exhibit Hall Authority where we transfer a set amount based on a formula to the Cobb Galleria. And there's also a transfer to the general fund. And then the remaining other operating costs and salary and benefits, that is associated with funding our community development or community relations department, I'm sorry. Then if we move on to our water sewer fund, you'll see some big numbers there. And as I mentioned before, you'll notice, unlike the other funds, there are higher revenues than there are expenditures. That's what I had discussed, the transfer to cash reserves to fund any infrastructure if we need that. So we see about $20 million for our revenues. So annual increases by the Cobb County Marietta Water Authority are automatically passed along to customers. Typically, in previous years, that increase had always been 2%. Last year it was 2.5%, and then this year it went back to 2%. So this budget assumes that increase in January as well, along with our a 7-cent increase for our stormwater fees. That will go from $3.59 to $3.66. We had typically there done a 50-cent increase every year, and we wanted to be more consistent so it wasn't as big of a burden on customers. So starting a few years back, we went with a 2% increase, which is about 7% every year. Our biggest expense in our water sewer fund is a wholesale purchase of water that you see there is about $10.7 million. And then the general fund, places like finance, IT, HR, other overhead costs are incurred by the general fund. So the water sewer fund transfers into the general fund each year. That transfer has increased this year, mainly due to just increasing budgets overall, particularly though, as I mentioned, our class and compensation study with salaries that go up there, that means there's a larger increase because that fund is reimbursing the general fund for employees contributing to it. So now, if we look at our proposed fee changes, I won't go through each one of these specifically. I will refer you in the bottom right-hand corner of all these to our budget book, page 27, to give a more in-depth narrative for each of these. Many of the departments just have pretty small fee changes. I did already mention water, sewer, and stormwater fee. Those impact probably the largest number of people. Our community development department is requesting a few fee changes. Mainly those are reinspection fees, a tree assessment for the new city arborist that we're recommending, which we'll get to in just a second. Environmental services, that's recycling center fees, just very small increases for things like TVs, monitors, recycling paint. Parks, they had a pretty significant changes to their fee schedule last year. They're much smaller this year. These are just things adding fees for new Riverline Park that we'll be bringing on, table rental fees or tweaking those for some events, and then adding new things like pickleball fees that are new things that Parks is adding. Our sanitation is bringing their rollout or their fees for rollout cans and in-ground cans just to be consistent with surrounding cities, along with tweaking the recycling fees. And then water distribution are increasing or altering a few of their fees just to be consistent and to help us with increased cost of materials there. Going through our personnel recommendations. So our first one you see up there is city arborist. Our community development department has faced a lot more requests for tree assessments and tree reviews these past years. Our city ordinance was changed in 2019, which requires more of those reviews. And then there are a lot of services for new developments as well. So we've had about $48,000 budgeted just in our community development for tree reviews. And then we have quite a bit in our public works and parks departments as well. One of the reasons that we need this position is in recent years, we've had a difficult time keeping vendors, especially at a consistent cost. They've been going up, or vendors have had to drop off because it's not profitable for them to do that. So looking on the horizon, we see that becoming increasingly difficult. So we are recommending that position. Going down the next, we are recommending 3 uncertified firefighters. Our fire department in the response division has been severely understaffed. These positions were actually approved a few years back and then were reconsidered, not approved. So essentially these positions are just to allow firefighters to be able to take their vacation time and not have to worry about being understaffed and not being able to respond to calls, which is one of our top priorities, is to make sure that emergency services are always provided and available. Next is a part-time admin services coordinator. This is in our highways and streets and public works. It's just to help with a big load of administrative work that they have over there with invoices, putting together reports and all of that, which is, it's a very big burden for them. If we go down next to our IT network and server engineer. So it's kind of become just an untenable situation to only have a few people partly focused on network and server in the city. We've continued to grow and we're having issues, and the IT department's been stretched very thin. So this is to be able to hire someone to focus solely on our networks and servers. E911, I did mention that our revenue, we're projecting a drop off there. So they have suggested they currently don't have a manager, that they decided not to fill a few of their emergency communication officer positions and instead have a manager to kind of oversee things and make sure everything is running well there. As you see at the bottom of the screen, all these positions are recommended for the full year, aside from the network and server engineer, which is budgeted 50% of the year, and then the firefighters budgeted 75% of the year. So the requested impact just for these positions for this year, so that's incorporating those at the partial year, is about $445. Once they're all on for the full year, it'll be about a $548,000 impact. With these positions, we did have 18 new full-time position requests from departments, and then 8 new part-time positions, which was about a little over $1 million impact that we've not recommended. And then one reclassification. There's actually 3 positions here, but it's just one job title. In our fire response division, we're recommending a reclass from fire lieutenant to fire captain. These are justified based on additional responsibilities and duties that these positions will be taking on. They'll be serving as acting battalion chief, each on one shift when they are out. And then we had 3 reclassifications that were not recommended. Most of those we figured out through our class and compensation study, and so we feel good about this recommendation. And with our debt, I'll pass it on to Kristen and let her take you home here.
Thanks, Landon. This is where I always take over for the last, I guess, 7 or 8 years. I always get the debt slide going forward. We have almost $69 million outstanding, 68.7 outstanding. At the end of fiscal year 21, we issued our 2021 series bonds, which were partially funding, advanced funding our 22 SPOS projects, a few of those, and also a little bit of general fund projects that we needed to cover. So during fiscal year 23, we're budgeting about $8.4 million worth of payments. $449,000 is related to the TAD fund. Several years ago, the city renegotiated, refinanced our TAD debt, and we have TAD bonds. The payment schedule is $100,000 a year of principal, and the remainder is the interest portion on that. We have done very well the last couple of years, and we have been able to pay additional principal on those bonds. We are planning for 1.994 to be paid out of the TAD fund this year. A little over $1 million of that is from Smyrna collections, and then about $974,000 is from the Cobb County. That's the plan. If we didn't pay these extra payments, we would be paying this debt through 2040. We're hoping that by these extra principal payments, we're able to bring that payment date way down. Last year, just for comparison, we paid about 1.2 million extra last year. 1.5 million is going to be budgeted to pay towards those TAD bonds in fiscal 23. $5.7 million is from the general fund, and a huge portion of that relates to the 2005 bonds, which are our parks bonds, and we're going to pay about $3.2 million worth of principal off on those bonds this year. We also have a little under $700,000 for the Smyrna Grove bonds that were issued a few years ago, and then our new bonds that we issued at the end of last fiscal year. We have about $1.8 million that's going to be paid on those for principal in the upcoming year. And they're split between the general fund and the SPLOST fund because they're shared projects. And so there's a formula based on that, and we chose to be consistent and apply that percentage through the life of the bonds as we move forward. Just for comparison, this question has been asked in the past. We had a little over $52 million outstanding last year. And then, like I said, we issued our 2021 bonds. They were $24,735,000. We were able to pay off our 2001 series bonds during the current fiscal year, and we were also able to pay a little over $2 million towards our 2005 park bonds, and then we paid off our Windy Hill bonds, and those were $7,725,000 worth of principal. So we did take on additional debt, but we were able to pay off a lot of debt during this current fiscal year to keep that number still, lower. All right. General fund CIP. This is where we fund all of our CIP projects. As Landon mentioned, when we started this process with the departments at the end of last year and then continued through this year. And the committee goes through, we vet the projects, we ask questions, and kind of, just make sure we're spending the city's resources as appropriately as possible. We have an increase of about $500,000 compared to our 2022 adopted budget. And good news about this year is we're able to fund about $1.8 million of these projects with our ARPA funds. We made that decision. Part of the ARPA is that you're allowed to spend it on general government uses, and we feel like there's nothing better than upkeep of our facilities, expanding our facilities, doing things we need to do to keep our facilities up to par. So of that $2.6 million, $1.8 is going to be paid from ARPA. The remainder is $800,000, and that's for green energy projects. Last year, we added the green energy, this project, the CIP, and we also added the streetlight fee to everybody's property tax bill. So that $800,000 is going to stay as general fund CIP and be funded by the revenue that we collect in the general fund. We're going to transfer that into the CIP fund to cover that. I think that's all. All right. A little bit about the projects. The phone system upgrade. We have an outdated phone system, and it's not being supported by the manufacturers anymore. We're having trouble with support, and so IT has asked for an upgrade during the current fiscal year. Desktop computer upgrades. We have this project every year, and this is just to continually update city computers. And we were able to not have this project last year during our 22 budget because we were able to use CARES funds to get a lot of new computers for our staff. But we have put this project back in here for this fiscal year. Parks and Recreation, Community Center painting. This is for the interior. That facility gets a lot of rental, and so it needs to be kept up nice, needs to be painted. And so this is going to paint the interior, including the basketball area. Sports fields, fencing, netting, etc. Our Parks and Rec department did an audit and found that they had a lot of improvements that they need to do to these things. And so we are funding a project for them that's going to give them $20,000 a year. The plan is for $20,000 over the next 5 years for them to deal with those things. Obviously, they're going to deal with the priorities first on those things. This is the same thing with the next one, the parking resurfaces and paving. This is another, just like I said, it's another, we're going to fund it every year, and they might use it all. They might carry some over to the subsequent year. They had mentioned on those that Tolleson, Riverline, and Chuck Camp and Jonquil were some of the top parks that needed to be addressed with this money. So we'll do as much as we can with that money, considering the cost of things are going up. We'll see how much we can get on that. The next one is Tolleson Park Trail Bridges. There are 2 wooden bridges that are deteriorating, and so it's a safety issue. So our Parks and Rec director recommended replacement of those for about $250,000. This was their top project that came out of the committee. This is, the priority because it's a safety issue. The next one down, library playground design for $20,000. Trying to determine what the best use of that space is as we're going through the redevelopment of downtown, and so we're funding a study to see what that's going to look like, what it's going to cost, and then to fund it in future years. Same thing with the Whitfield Park design. The Parks and Rec had come to us for the last couple of years requesting about $500,000, if I remember correctly, on this project because they had a lot of big revisions to do. We have asked them to kind of look at that design, figure out what's the best use of that is, and then we will fund that in future years. Next one down is Chuck Camp Storage Building. We have some new things for the city that need storing. We also have aging facilities out there, and so this is going to provide some weatherproof, some secure storage for our Parks and Rec facilities. And the next one down is LED screens, $300,000. We're doing a lot more outdoor events lately, and we want to continue to do more. It's a lot of community engagement, and so we're recommending purchasing these. It's 2 screens, and then they'll be available to us whenever we want them. A little bit more parks. You can see we're very park friendly with this CIP. Latanzi Field Improvement is $200,000. There's several improvements over there that need to be done, and so this is going to go towards those. Same thing with Brinkley Park. There's some stormwater over there. There's a lot of issues over there that need to be addressed, and so the department is asking for $100,000 to be able to start the process of making those improvements. Next one down, last one for Parks and Rec is $100,000 for Wolf Center renovations. And they've got a lot to do over there. They've got some painting to do. They've got some doors, some windows. The condensation is having an effect on the windows over there and just wear and tear on the building. So they've requested $100,000 to kind of encompass all of the interior things that they need to do. Public safety, police locker room update. A little over $171,000. Their locker rooms are over 20 years old. They've got water damage. They've got sagging countertops, carpet's old. They're just not in good condition, and so the police are asking for those to be renovated. The next one down is police computer refresh. This is similar to the computer refresh I spoke about in the IT. This is a project that we do every year to make sure that we have the best equipment for our officers on the road. We were able to fund this in our with our CARES money previously, so we kind of have a break, and our plan is as we go forward to maybe do this every other year because the department doesn't really need $42,000 of computers every year. So this is the year where we're recommending funding for it. Public Works, as I mentioned earlier, we added a streetlight fee to the property tax bills last year, and the proceeds from that fee are going towards green energy projects within the city. We are talking about HVAC replacements, computer board standardization so that we don't have the large fluctuations of temperatures in our buildings that we sometimes have. And we're also looking at replacing generators in the event that we need those. And whatever this is the same number of revenue and expense for this, so it's entirely funded by that fee. And then we have miscellaneous carpet replacement. It says carpet, it's really flooring. We've been using that lately for more, for flooring besides carpet. And so we fund this $30,000 a year and leave it up to our building and grounds and administration to kind of determine the best need for those. Similar, the detention pond maintenance, we realized a couple of years ago that we had some issues with our detention ponds, and so we have also started an ongoing project, and we're going to put $100,000 towards that this year to just maintain those and make the improvements we need to. The next two relate to our sanitation. We have underground sanitation cans. They're in areas that are just not suitable to have the rollouts, and so they have to be underground. Those require repair every so many years, and so we're on a continual basis of rotating through those and improving them, replacing the parts that need to be replaced to make sure that they're safe for our citizens and for our staff out there. And then the next one, sanitation carts. This is a combination of replacing the carts that are damaged and also getting new cans for new residences that need them. So all that is a little over $2.6 million worth of funding for the general fund CIP. E911 CIP, they had requested to have their furniture replaced in this upcoming fiscal year in 23. We moved that to 24. As Landon mentioned a little while ago, there's a large supplement that's coming from the general fund to keep that fund equal, and so we're recommending pushing that furniture replacement back a year to minimize cost in that fund. Water and sewer CIP. First one, infrastructure, $2.6 million. That's a project that we fund annually for water and sewer. This covers all kinds of maintenance that they need to do on the lines to keep them running like they're supposed to hopefully offset problems. We usually do about a 7% increase on that because costs increase every year. So we're trying to have a steady increase on that line item versus having big jumps in that amount. Meters and dials, this project is it's coming to an end for a little while. Back in 2018, we added this project, and it's a 5-year project that we're replacing the meters and the dials. Those are the things that obviously read the usage from our customers. They have about a 15-year lifespan, and they need to be replaced. And so spent 5 years replacing them, and then we'll have about 10 years before we have to start replacing them again, and we'll start that cycle all over again. Drainage, $241,000. This is, just for drainage improvements that come up throughout the year. We are not specific on those improvements. It's sort of a priority base based on the information that comes from our Public Works Department. And then lead and copper, that is for the mandated EPA. We have to test, we have to have an inventory, and then we have to, remediate those issues if we have any. And so we've got a 3-year project for that, to have that funded. All of these projects are funded by a transfer from the Water Sewer Fund into the Water Sewer CIP. So that's that. Stormwater CIP, this is the monthly stormwater fee that's put on the utility bills. And as Landon mentioned earlier, it is a 7-cent or a 2% increase that will be effective in January of 2023, the same time that our new water rates go into effect. and he's already covered that the fees going to go from $359 to $366. We had increases in January of 2018 of about 50 cents, and then 2 years later we did the 7 cent increase and started on that path of slowly raising that fee every year. And we feel like these smaller increases are going to continue to meet the requirements for capital improvements that we need over the next couple of years. 2016 SPLOST, this tax was collected for the first part of our current fiscal year. Collections of that stopped in December of 2021, and so now we're just spending the money that we collected through that SPLOST. Majority of that is the Windy Hill project, which we're all aware of. About $10 million is planned to be spent on that project in fiscal year 23. The 22 SPLOST, in fiscal year 23, our priorities for spending are the continued development of downtown. That's obviously started, and we're going to hopefully wrap that up in 23, so $2.9 million for that. We're going to start planning and work on the aquatics and gymnastics and family learning library facility. That $35,000 is just some of the planning and some of the administrative stuff to get us ready to move forward on that. That is one of that along with the downtown development were funded by our bonds that we issued. The downtown redevelopment was not fully funded, but the aquatics and gymnastics was fully funded. That project's about $11 million. Parking deck for downtown is also on the list. I said 35,000 a minute ago, it's $1 million. I'm looking at 22, I apologize. The downtown parking deck, $3.6 million. We've had some professional services costs that we've incurred this year, and we're hoping to get that parking deck constructed. During next fiscal year, that project was also funded by the bond. Splash pad, $1.3 million. That is another bond-funded project, and we're hoping to get that completed in fiscal year 23 and open for our citizens. And then we have, some other projects that we're doing. We've got our debt service is included in the $20 million we're going to spend, and just various things. We have a 3-year plan to buy our new radio systems for our public safety, and so those payments start in fiscal year 23 and continue through 24 and 25. As Landon mentioned, we also have traffic calming in this. We have our resurfacing for our streets, we have our sidewalks, and a few public safety improvements that we're planning to do as well. Vehicle replacements, I'm almost done, I promise, last slide. We have 24 new additions that we're recommending to the tune of $1.1 million. As Landon mentioned, we are funding more in that fund to help build up the fund balance, the reserves for future years when we have larger purchases. And we're also putting some money aside for emergencies. Unfortunately, we've had to use that the past couple of years for wrecked vehicles. And so we're budgeting $150,000 for those emergency funds. We had previously budgeted $100,000, so we increased that by $50,000. There's 22 replacements, scheduled replacements. There's an early replacement, which is an engineering F-150, and then there's also an early replacement of the water F-550. And so the water and sewer one is in bad shape, so it needs to be replaced. So we're recommending approval of that. In fiscal year 24 and 26, those are our big years. We have some fire trucks. There's 2 fire trucks that are $600,000 a piece, and then there's also 2 sanitation trucks for about $227,000 each in fiscal year 26. So by funding extra in this year and previous years, we're building up the money, like I said, to be able to pay those and not have a significant impact on cash flows of the general fund. And between that 24 big year and 26, we have a smaller year for 25, but we'll continue to fund at this level to maintain reserves in that fund. So the budget is online. Go to our finance tab of the website, and it'll take you to it. It's out there for public consumption. There's a hard copies at the library and also with the city clerk, with Heather, if people want to review them in hard copy versus online. And tonight was our required public hearing. We're going to meet with the council again June 2nd to discuss any changes, answer any questions that you might have at that CAL, and then we're hoping for the budget adoption on June 6th. So, any questions? That was a lot, I know.
Any questions of the team? Y'all did a great job putting this together. Thank you.
We ran everybody off, it looks like.
Well, no, so this is a public hearing. I'd like to invite anybody who'd like to speak for or against this item to come forward now and be sworn in.
Here, so I might as well make it public. I do.
You'll state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Montserrat Knowlton. I live at 1367 Poplar Point, Smyrna 30082. I just have a question that nobody talks about. And last year it was an additional tax that was passed on to citizens, I guess homeowners. And that was the fee, I believe it was $48 for light consumption of neighborhoods. And that used to be included in our tax bill. And last year it was just separated and made a separate payment. So that was like an increase in our taxes. And of course, nobody realized until we got the bill that we had been increased $48, at least on my tax bill. I don't know if everybody was equally charged $48. And I was just wondering if this is what's going to happen this year, because people last year were on an uproar about this $48, and I guess nobody knows that you are preparing a new budget and that things are coming back again and that it's tax time again. So my question is, are you all going to be collecting the $48 separate from the tax bill?
Yes. So the fee is actually, it's $42. That was, yeah,
okay.
that was put on. It's $350 a month. The city decided to put that on the property tax bill versus the utility bill, so it's an annual charge versus a monthly charge. It is the $800,000 that I was speaking about on the green energy projects that I mentioned. So all that money that we're collecting is going towards green energy improvements throughout the city. So it's the number I was.
And lights is street lights are considered green.
Well,
projects?
we're collecting the fee on the street lights and we're putting it towards green energy.
I see.
So.
The citizens of Smyrna are not aware of all this, so
I spoke to a lot of them when the bills went out this year. I think everyone in finance.
Last year.
Yeah, when the bills hit end of last year, we spoke to a lot of residents about this fee.
But see, people don't realize this is happening again, and we have no control over what's happening. Is this something that the citizens of Smyrna should approve, to have these monies collected and spent in this manner? That is my question.
It's a fee that is, it's a fee just like the other fees the city charges that's added to the fee schedule that's approved in coordination with the budget every year, so.
Yeah, but that was something new. That was.
Ms. Knowlton, this is a council decision, and you're welcome to make any other comments you'd like to make, but that was a council decision, a policy decision made by this elected body, and that's the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, there's no vote on this item. Thank you, y'all, for your presentation and all your work over the last several months on this. We'll move on to the next item. We'll close the public hearing, move on to the next item, which is item B, 2022-263, Approval of amendment to the adopted fiscal year 2022 budget for the project length budget for the approved 2022 SPLOST projects and related accounts. Ms. Masheri, the background, please.
The city needs to amend the project-length budgets for SPLOST 2022. In past SPLOST, the city has annually adopted budgets related to the SPLOST projects. Best practice is to adopt the full amount of the voter-approved projects. Adoption of the project-length budgets makes the financial administration more efficient for both finance and other city departments. The amendment proposed will set the expenditure budgets at the amounts approved on the referendum and also budget for other accounts related to the administration of the SPLOST. Approval of an amendment to the adopted FY 2022 budget for the project-length budget for the approved 2022 SPLOST projects and related account is recommended by staff.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? I know we've been over this in our agenda meetings. Anything to add, finance team? Nope. All right, if no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Welch. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 5-0. Item C, 2022-283, approval of the 2021 to 2024 City of Smyrna Strategic Plan. Ms. Masheri, the background, please.
Last year, the mayor, city council, administration, and department heads embarked on a robust strategic planning process to prioritize local government initiatives. This effort represents an organization-wide and issues-driven plan to guide daily operations. The resulting plan identifies 5 focus areas: economic development, community development, civic engagement, employee excellence, quality of life, with specific goals for each area. Once approved by council, the staff team will establish a process to track progress on the strategic plan and a calendar of scheduled progress reports. Staff recommends approval of the 2021-20 to 24 strategic plan.
And am I correct, as far as staff can tell, this is the first of its kind in our city? I know we've done a vision initiative in the past, but we've never had a formal strategic plan. Is that?
That's correct. We were unable to look.
Where can the public find this?
We will have it posted online as soon as we get approval.
Okay. This has been with input from everybody. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay. We've got a motion made by Mr. Lindley, seconded by Dr. Wheaton. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 5-0. Item 7 is commercial building permits. We have none. Item 8 is the consent agenda. Ms. Masheri, can you please read the consent agenda for council approval?
Yes, sir. MIN 2022-32, approval of the April 28, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. MIN 2022-33, approval of the May 2nd, 2022 pre-council meeting minutes. MIN 2022-34, approval of the May 2nd, 2022 mayor and council meeting minutes. Agreement 2022-15, approval of the agreement with Tetra Tech to provide unregulated contaminant monitoring for 2023, 2024, and 2025 in the amount of $12,640 in order for the city to remain compliant with the Environmental Protection Agency's requirements for systems serving greater than 10,000 persons, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Agreement 2022-16, approval of the agreement with PFS Public Facilities and Services, 4010 Stonewall Tell Road, Atlanta, Georgia, 30349, to refurbish 9 bus shelters, locations attached to the item, at the cost of $3,100 each, for a total cost of $27,900, and to authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Agreement 2022-17, approval for the agreement of pond rehabilitation on Cliff Crest Drive to be performed by Ardito Construction, 1290 Austell Road, Southeast Marietta, Georgia, 30008, in the amount of $67,060.27 to be paid out of the Stormwater Infrastructure CIP Fund, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Agreement 2022-18, approval of the agreement with Croy Engineering, 200 Cobb Parkway North, Building 400, Suite 413, Marietta, Georgia, 30062, for Creekwood and Highlands waterline permitting and bidding assistance in the amount of $21,000 to be paid out of Water Sewer General Fund, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Item 2022-253, approval of the installation of stop signs at the intersection of Powder Springs Street and Wayland Court. 2022-254, approval of the installation of stop signs at the intersection of Powder Springs Street and Stone Creek Road. 2022-256, approval of installation of stop signs at the intersection of Dixie Ave and Pierce Avenue. 2022-257, approval of the installation of stop signs at the intersection of Ridge Road and Cedar Cliff Road. 2022-258, approval for authorization of removing old meters and installing new meters by Reed and Shows Meter Solutions, P.O. Box 209, Bowdoin Junction, Georgia 30109, in the amount of $36,360 to be paid out of the meter CIP fund, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. 2022-264, authorization for storm drainage improvements on Fieldwood Drive to be performed by Ardito Construction, 1290 Estelle Road Southeast, Marietta, Georgia 30008, in the amount of $38,451.50 to be paid out of Stormwater Infrastructure CIP Fund. 2022-281, authorization for road closure on Lee Street between Marion Street and Hickory Circle on Monday, May 30th, 2022, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for the Forest Hills Neighborhood Block Party by resident Melissa Powell. 2022-282, authorization for a road closure on Eastfield Road at Timberland Street and Bank Street Southeast on Friday, May 20, 2022, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for the Cheney Woods Spring Block Party by resident Leanne Stell Raker.
Was that all?
I can confirm it is.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Wilkinson. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 5-0. Item 9 is ward and committee reports. We'll start tonight with Mr. Lindley.
No report this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Welch. No report. Ms. Wilkinson.
I'll try to keep this short, but I do want to recognize and thank the company that the city has partnered with, Rebuilding Together Atlanta. They organized an event in a Ward 5 neighborhood, a cleanup, and they had a lot of volunteers, I'll say, from Lockheed, and they were able to get a lot of work done in the neighborhood, and they've also continued to do work on a resident's home, a veteran, with a grant that they received, and to help him to remain and age in place. Things like repairing his deck or rebuilding his deck on the back of his house, and also adding grab bars and things like that to help him to continue to live independently. So I want to thank all the volunteers and the people that showed up on Friday. Thank you.
Mr. Gould.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick comment. We won't meet again until after our local high school seniors graduate, so congratulations, including to my daughter Abby, and yeah, best of luck to Campbell High School seniors and Osborne seniors and other Smyrna residents on moving on to greater things. Thanks.
Dr. Wheaton.
Can't get it to cut on. All right, there we go. Yeah, similarly, congratulations to all the graduates. Certainly my son is in that category, so exciting chapter ahead for sure for those in our community. Just want to say a quick note of thanks for all the staff and the folks at Georgia Tech Research Institute for a really good event this past weekend. The science activity that we had down in the park by the river was a lot of fun, really good turnout, a lot of good community engagement, and a lot of excited, enthused kids. It's always exciting to see that. With that, I yield.
Ms. Penny.
Nothing to report, sir.
Mr. Cochran. Ms. Heather, anything on the election?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to remind everyone that this is the last week for advanced voting. There will not be any voting available on Saturday or next Monday, but Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can vote the general primary, and you can also, please remember to vote for your Ward 2 open seat, and that would be at the First Baptist Church here in Smyrna, located at 1275 Church Street.
All right, that concludes our reports. Item 10 is show cause hearings. We have none. Item 11 is citizen input. Nobody signed up to speak this evening. So if there's no other business to be brought before this body, we are adjourned at 9:14. Thank you.